ReliaQuest mental performance coaches Dr. Nicole Detling and Derin McMains interview top performers across multiple industries to unpack the strategies and the mindset they use to get the job done. Welcome to No Show Dogs, powered by ReliaQuest. Hey, welcome back to the No Show Dogs podcast, powered by ReliaQuest. My name's Derin McMains, and I'm alongside my co-host, Dr. Nicole Detling. Doc, what is going on?
Hey, man, I'm having a great day today. I'm so excited about our guest. I get the chance to reconnect with someone that I knew years ago and just have so much love and respect for. And so I'm really fired up for today's podcast.
Oh, I know today is going to be a banger because University of Utah head volleyball coach Beth Launiere is here, and she's even written an amazing book that we're going to talk about a little bit around the business of coaching. We're going to break it down. But Beth, welcome to No Show Dogs.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Let's go. So, hey, Doc, if you could go ahead and read her bio just to update on everyone on her incredible career and what she's done at the University of Utah. And then let's jump into this thing.
All right, let's go. So Beth Launiere, one of the longest tenured head coaches in NCAA volleyball, just completed her 35th season at the helm of the University of Utah volleyball program in the fall of 2024. Now, Launiere arrived in Utah in 1990 and took over a team that had compiled a 1-32 record the previous year. Inspiring a turnaround in the program, she recorded Utah's first winning season in 7 years in 1992, which was just her third year at the program. So essentially, she built that program from the ground up. And as a result of that, she has then put Utah on the map as a perennial top 25 program. Now, if that's not enough, with free time on her hands after the world was shut down by COVID-19, Launiere stayed busy by writing a book called Stop Competing and Start Winning, The Business of Coaching, with Utah volleyball donor and good friend Leo Hopf. Beth, thank you so much for being here. What an incredible legacy you have built and are continuing to add to every single year. Just huge congrats. Super stoked to know you. Super stoked to be able to talk to you today. Just wanted to say that just as right off the bat, like your legacy is incredible and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. Listening to you go through all of that just brought back a lot of memories, and a lot of good memories and a lot of tough memories too. You know, the early years were not easy, and it's so long ago now. I think of my career in terms of kind of eras. There was the building era, there was the maintaining era, and then there was the Pac-12 era, and now the Big 12. And that was a big shift. And I'm sure we'll talk about that because that was a lot of part of why the book came about was our move into the Pac-12. I think it was 11, 12 years ago. Now, of course, Pac-12 isn't, I don't know, it's around, but not as it was. And now we're in the Big 12, which we're excited about. But yeah, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears through the years, but really proud of what we've accomplished with the program.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And I know just from having known you for years too, like you contribute so much to the local volleyball community. And how exciting is it that we have a pro volleyball team now in Salt Lake City and you have former players on that team, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's so exciting that we have it in Salt Lake City. There's now 2 women's pro league volleyball leagues, which is exciting across the country. I have currently have 5 players playing professional, 4 in the States and 1 in Europe. And so, yeah, it's just such a great time for the sport of volleyball. The ratings, the numbers are off the chart. The attendance is off the chart. Television ratings are off the chart. It's a great sport. And so, yeah, and I've always enjoyed working with you, Nicole. We had a good run working together with you as our sports psychologist. And you were a big part of our success for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. DMAC, were you starting to ask a question there? I don't want to
interrupt. Yes. The biggest thing I got to jump right into is 1-32. And then you show up. So I'm just right away, I'm thinking about business leaders that are listening to this, entrepreneurs, and maybe coming off a tough year, right? We're right here at the beginning of the year, or tough quarter, whatever it may be. And you talked about this building era. So I'm just curious, like you walk in, like how do you build belief right away when the results from the last year don't match it? Like what's your approach? How do you start building belief?
Yeah, that's a great question. I knew I'd come from a program that had gone to the Final Four the year before, the University of Illinois, where I was an assistant coach. So I came in as honestly a 26-year-old that was very confident and thought I knew a lot, which looking back on it was, not the case. I knew that I needed to sell me. That was probably the number one thing. That I didn't have a brand, I didn't have a program that we could sell, but I could sell me. I could sell my background. I could sell, where I had just come from and what my vision for the program was. And that was the most important thing, that I got what we were going to do. This is why. And just boldly made some strong, to be honest, I mean, it's not that hard to win 2 matches,
Sure.
so,
Good point.
we won the second match, doubled the win total, and everyone was very excited. And I said, we've got to raise our expectations here. But yeah, then we won 7, then we won 15, then we won 21, then we won 25. And we had a 5-year plan, and it was very intentional. I've gotten much more intentional now. I look at, the Pac-12 era was actually another building era. And so I was able to reflect on some of my earlier years, but got much more intentional this time around. I went with resources outside of the coaching profession. I went to the business world to really figure out how to do this great, because the Pac-12 was the best conference in the country at the time. And I said we had to unturn every stone to figure out how we could get just a little bit better in every area, because we weren't all of a sudden going to get better players immediately. We weren't going to be able to turn this tide if we just didn't attack it from every aspect. So kind of 2 different building eras, but definitely more intentional in the second one.
Yeah, I got to dig into that a little bit. So you say you went to the business world, right? And we know a lot of our listeners are business leaders, entrepreneurs, people out there, trying to figure some things out and grow things from the beginning, or figure out how to get over a failure or something like that. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what you learned from the business world that you were able to apply, that then maybe could help some of our listeners apply that for them as well.
Yeah, so my co-author is Leo Hoff, and he's a world-renowned business consultant, and he is a friend of the program. And so I asked him to come in and look at my program from the inside. And what we learned really fast was that the world of athletics does some things really well, and the world of business does some things really well. What I learned from the world of business was the importance of systems, the importance of efficiency, the importance of just staying on task. And world of business, I think, has learned through this book, we interviewed a lot of business people, was that we do emotion really well. We do passion really well. We do team building really well. There was a big difference in the world of team building, because in the world of business, you might build a team for a 3-month project, for instance, or it's a shorter lived, time. And in athletics, I mean, we're building a team for these student athletes' 4-year career, and it just goes on and on. And so it's just a lot longer process. And so I think there's things to learn from other disciplines in the professional world. And like I said, I just knew that I had to get better in every aspect. And that's where I went. You could go to the world of sports psychology, you could go to marketing, the world of marketing, all these different disciplines can add. It's such a great education opportunity to improve your lot in life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people make the mistake of just siloing themselves into whatever it is that they do, without recognizing that looking at other fields that might not even initially make sense can be really impactful and powerful in learning some of those lessons that you can utilize in what you are doing.
Yeah, it was a game changer for me in my profession and as a coach. It was really profound and had a huge impact on. We went into the Pac-12, and we were ranked, I don't know, that we were going to finish 9th out of 12 at the time. Well, we had just come from winning Mountain West Conference championship, so that was really like, okay, well, we can't finish 9th. We got to figure this out, and we finished 9th. And actually, I think we were picked 10th or 11th. We finished 9th the first 2 years, then we finished 7th, then we finished 5th. And then 4th and 3rd, we just kind of a steady climb, but again, very intentional with how we attacked it.
Beth, I was thinking, again, I mean, this podcast exists for business leaders can learn from people that have done it at a high level in sports specifically, right? And when I think about the student athletes you get, the players and your staff, and you think about development and and you talk about how do you get intentionally better year in and year out. I think there's a lot of importance around expectations, right? And one thing I would love to hear you talk about a little bit is like, how do you set clear expectations so you can realize the full value of your star or A players, right? And at the same time, though, deal appropriately with your average, your C performers, however you want to classify them. Like how do you set those clear expectations to get the full value out of them?
Yeah, one of our chapters in our book is about stars and C performers, and it's probably it is the number one thing that we get asked about when we do presentations is C performers.
Mm,
And so I can definitely, speak to that quite a bit. But, setting expectations, I really believe in empowering my players, but within a framework of what we're trying to accomplish from the program. And so for me, I believe that I've got to do my work in planning, organizing, having philosophy, having, goals, and then setting clear expectations for the players. Number one, getting them to buy into the program vision, number one. And our program vision, if I can share that, is very kind of three very simple things. I don't know, about 15 years ago, maybe you were working with us, Nicole. I had a lot of things I was sharing with the team, and I think I called something volley school, and we would just be like, oh, we're going to sit down and talk about something with mental performance, or we're going to talk about stats. We're going to talk about this different stuff. And I was like, what do I really believe in? Like, what drives me every day to just kind of clean that up? And it became very clear to me that the vision of the program was three pillars. One was that we're trying to win at a really high level. Whatever the potential of that team was that year, as a program, we've been trying to get to the Final Four. We've been to the Sweet 16, 4 times, a couple matches away. And so we weren't going to shy away from setting that expectation. That is why we're together. I always tell my players, we're not together because we're a little social group. We're together because we formed a team that is going to try to do great things. Second is that we're going to learn lifelong lessons through the pursuit of trying to be great. And when you put yourself out there and when you say, you want to be great, that you're going to face hard things. And obviously being in education and working with student athletes, having them learn lifelong lessons is very important to me, but it's only through, I think, best way is through doing hard things. But we're very intentional about how are we going to respond to these things. And then the third is to just have a team that loves, trusts, and respects each other. And that's not easy. And we are very intentional with that third pillar of our program. So setting clear expectations within the confines of the vision of the program. I can go on and talk about, kind of stars and C performers.
sure. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, stars are interesting. I had a player, her name was Danny Drews, and she plays for the Salt Lake professional volleyball team, Love Salt Lake. And she was a 4-time All-American for us. And I learned really easily. She loved new challenges, number one. She hated to fail. And I saw that as a real detriment to her development, not wanting to fail. She comes from a family. Their motto is winners win. Very athletic family. She's got 2 brothers in the NFL. Her parents were college athletes. And I had to get her to understand that failing was okay, that you weren't going to get to the winning if you didn't fail. And so I really treated her quite differently. I asked her every single day what she was going to do to fail. And we had that constant communication. So we would set kind of practice goals for a couple of weeks and go, this is something I think you need to get better at. Let's move the dial on that, but you got to fail. And so, for instance, Danny, you have to hit more line. And she wasn't very good at that. And so every day, how's it going? How's it going? I was watching, but she'd be like, I've been missing by a foot. I just keep missing out of bounds by a foot. I go, okay, then, bring it in, tool the block, whatever. And then pretty soon she's like, did you see me tool the block? I hit line, but I tooled the block. And I'm like, yep, I saw. And all of a sudden now she's developed all these different, ways to score down the line. And so I think with stars, I think the biggest thing, they're usually very motivated people. I think you have to get them to fail to learn and grow. The C performer on the other side of that is, just our term for someone that isn't living up to the expectations for a number of reasons. It might be because of talent level, But it might be because of experience. It might be because of confidence. It might be not understanding. It might be something short term with, family problems. There's all these different reasons why someone might be a C performer. So you've got to identify what those reasons are, because you don't want to just go, well, they're not good enough, let's get rid of them. You want to help them and grow. And then ultimately, if they don't perform at a higher level, then you may have to make a change. But there's a really high cost of C performers in an organization. I learned this was maybe one of the most important things I learned from Leo in the business world is the cost of C performers is just massive for an organization. Number one, they're not getting the work done. Number two, they're blocking other people from getting work done, causing bottlenecks potentially. I could go on and on. There's a really large cost. And I always thought I could save everybody as a coach. But what I've learned is I have been hired to win volleyball matches and to have my players have a good experience and to graduate. So those things are sometimes contradictory. But at the end of the day, I have to win. And so I need people that are going to perform, and I'm going to work with them a ton. But at some point, maybe it's time to move on.
How do you decide when it's, now again, it's probably different for everyone, right? But I'm just curious, you've been doing this a long time. You have built up so many subjective experiences that it probably feels objective at this point, right? But how do you, what's the thing you're looking for where you're like, I just don't think this student athlete's going to turn the corner. I don't think she's going to get to the level we need her to get to. Is it in practice? Is it in body language? I'm just curious, what are the things that you start picking up on?
I think you have to be careful of subjectiveness, and certainly it plays into everything we do because we're all, we're people in this organization. But I'm going to try to get as many stats and empirical information as I can get. If I feel like we may need to make a move, I'm going to make sure that I've got that very, very backed up on why. And that could include not just maybe statistical analysis for on court for volleyball, but it could also be, are they being a good citizen within the program? Are they making all the meetings they're supposed to make? Are they doing all the, recovery and rehab work that they're supposed to be doing in the training room? So we have a lot of different areas that they have expectations on them. I think it's one of the most hardest thing to do. And by the way, we do talk about our staffs in this book a lot too. So much of this stuff has to do with staffing, not just the student athletes, even though they parallel each other a lot. It's, letting go of a staff member or a player is really one of the hardest things I've ever done. I've never actually gone, hey, you're fired, you're out of here. I have a lot of conversations and try to get them to understand, where they are in the program and maybe it's time to move on. So yeah, I'm not very good at that.
Well, there's always something to improve, right? Yeah, exactly. Hey, since you mentioned staff, I do want to bring this up. You have a chapter in your book about delegating, and that can be one of the most challenging things to do when it's so easy to look at tasks and think, I'm just going to do it myself because I know I'll get it done correctly. And as a leader, when you do that, you sure as heck take on way too many things. And so I'd love our listeners to just hear a little bit about your ideas for delegating. How do you delegate effectively so the right work gets done by the right people in the right way, and to feel okay about that, to actually allow yourself to delegate and let go of that task and give that person the autonomy they need to get it done?
Other than C performers, delegation is the second most important ask about from our book. It's delegation is actually what started this whole journey for me. When I went to Leo Hoff and asked him, can you look at my program? And we went to lunch, and I said, I'm feeling mired in all the muck. I can't get to everything I need to get to. I feel like we're just spinning our wheels and all of the problems that we have. And he said, "Oh, that's easy. I got a perfect solution for you." I go, "Well, gosh, great." And I go, "What is it?" And he goes, "It's the golden rule." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Everything that can be delegated must be delegated." And I said, "Yeah, okay, Leo, I get that." And he goes, "No, I don't think you do." I said, "No, I do." He goes, "Nope, you don't." So we left that lunch, and I thought about it a lot. And I went back to him and I said, "Okay, you're right. I don't get it." So the most important thing is understanding that you can't do it all, but also understanding that, the more you teach and train others to do it, then it's going to be the amount of work and tasks and projects you can get done is going to, tenfold itself pretty fast. But you have to be okay with letting go of control. You have to be okay with, we talk about like an 80% rule. You have to be okay with something being done at about 80% of how you think it should be done. And if it's done that well, that's pretty good. Of course, I could do it 100% of how I wanted it, but I'm not going to get to half the stuff that we need to get to. So that was a really good concept for me to be able to, understand it. The other concept I think that's really important is understanding the value of people's time that are in the organization. So we talk about like a leadership agenda and a tool that's called above the line and below the line. And above the line are tasks and projects that can only merit my time and attention. Nobody else can do those things. And everything else needs to go below the line. Okay. And we also have like we have a concept of cascading delegation as well, right? Like what's above someone's line might go below someone else's line. It cascades down, to somebody in the organization that is got their own above the line and below the line. But for me, what merited my time and attention? So as an example, I started delegating, started getting better at it. We had played BYU on a Friday night and had the weekend off in early preseason. I was going to take the weekend off because I needed some time, but otherwise I would have gone out recruiting. And I thought, things are in good order. My assistants were out recruiting. I'm going to take the weekend off. Well, it turns out I had a recruit that had committed to us that was still getting recruited by some other programs. And I was a little bit nervous about the commit. She had not signed her national letter of intent yet.
I know who this is.
Yeah. It turns out she lived in Hawaii.
Yes. Okay.
Which wasn't the worst place to go, but because I had delegated and because I had the weekend free, I was actually able to fly to Hawaii in the middle of the season and do a home visit with this player and spent 2 hours with her family. And after 2 hours, felt very good about the commitment, not a problem, flew back home. She was a 3-time All-American for us. So when you talk about, the value of your time, that was a massive value of my time. So yeah, trying to get the right people doing the right work is very important. And I think it has to do with, what merits your time and attention and what else can you delegate away?
Do you ever get any pushback? So you delegate a task and one of your staff members says, I don't have time for that. That's not something that I know how to do, or in any way, any kind of pushback. And how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I ask my staff all the time to be honest about if they're overworked, if I've put too much on their plate, and that and usually through the course of the year, I need to recalibrate and maybe mix some things around on whose responsibility things are. Because, maybe you have a star performer and it's really easy to delegate to them because it's going to be done very well. But the other cost of that is, maybe you don't want to give to the senior. Another cost is you're going to overburden one of your stars. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, they don't do it very often because I think they're nervous too, but I do encourage them to go, hey, that's a little heavy. I can't, not a problem. So yeah, I think having them understand, that this isn't something I'm going to spend time on. I need you to spend time. Now, we have a director of volleyball operations. And so there's so one of the things that I do is teach my staff how to delegate, because assistant coaches aren't as good at delegating because I just got better at delegating. And so I spend a lot of time helping them understand delegation so they can move some of the stuff below the line for them down to our director of volleyball operations. Now, some people don't have people to delegate to. So I get that question asked a lot. I think the question to ask yourself in that situation is, if it's above the line and you're the only person, then do it. If it's below the line and you don't have someone to delegate to, then it probably doesn't need to be done. Another way to look at it, I guess.
No Show Dogs is brought to you by ReliaQuest, a global leader in cybersecurity. ReliaQuest helps enterprise cybersecurity teams increase visibility, reduce complexity, and manage risk through its security operations platform, Gray Matter. Powered by decades of experience and streamlined by AI and automation, ReliaQuest exists to make security possible. Learn more at ReliaQuest.com. One part of the book I just want to call out that was, at least in this section, that was probably one of my favorites around this idea of delegation. And then I want to get to giving feedback as well, right, as a part of staff development. But what I read in there, you wrote this, that the single worst approach to delegation you can take is, I can do it better and faster myself. And then as I read that, I was like, yeah, and then you go on to say, which is true. It's why you were promoted, which I thought was brilliant. And then you wrote this, I thought it was a brilliant question. You wrote this: the real question is this: what value will be lost if I do the work that someone else could have done instead of doing the work that only I can do? And I think this really ties in nicely what you're talking about, like going through the thought exercise or whiteboarding it out, drawing a line. What are all the things I do in my day to day? What's above the line? Only the things I can do. And then what's the other things that are below the line? I think that what a great thought exercise. And with that, so I had to say that because I love that part of the book, by the way. So the framework, I love the framework that you brought up as well to approach feedback, right? When it comes to staff development. And I think it was the acronym SBI, which stands for situation, behavior, and impact. And I think that's just a great framework. Can you just unpack that a little bit? Because I know there's a lot of leaders they're coaches, right? I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at, you're coaching, you're trying to help people get a little better. And so can you just unpack a little bit about how, maybe an example, a story around where you emphasize a situation, you talked about the specific behavior and then the impact to the team or the program?
So yeah, the SBI I think is a great tool for learning how to give feedback. I think a common feedback tool is to say what you did well, kind of the sandwich tool, like you did this well, but we need you to do this well, and then something positive again. And what I think some research has shown is that, well, they hear that you've done something well. Why are they telling me to do something different? And so there's some contradiction there. So the SBI model is situation, behavior, impact. And, talking to somebody about, here is the situation. This is the behavior that I think needs to be adjusted. And this is the impact that we'll have on the organization. And it's just a very clear and concise way to give feedback. And it doesn't become personal. And so, as an example, I have a player that's a leader and very, very strong voice on the team. And she kept saying something that seemingly wasn't horrible, but I talked to her about, through this model, I say, here's the situation. You keep saying that spring sucks. Okay. It's our time of really tough training, more individual strength conditioning, and it can be kind of tough. I said, but the problem is for a lot of players, spring's awesome because they get more individual work. They get time to work on their game. And if they don't play a lot, they get to play in the spring matches, maybe that they don't get to play in the, championship fall season. And so the situation here is that your words are impacting them in a way that's probably, kind of negative, but also isn't true for everybody. So so that's the situation. The behavior is that I think you need to be much more careful with your words and understand that your words are powerful, and that will have a big impact on the team. And so situation, behavior, change that we're looking for, and then how it can impact, because everybody wants to understand, if I'm going to make a change, what's the impact from it? How is this going to help the organization? And I think that's important for them to understand that.
For sure. And I'll give a business example, because I'm telling you, I read this 2 days ago. I read this little section and I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. Something happened yesterday at work, right? And this is and I'm telling you, Beth, this is what I used. And so I'm so grateful, right? I just said, yeah, so here's the business example. The situation was, hey, today in the presentation, is how I started. Today in the presentation, you didn't welcome all of the remote listeners. That was the behavior. And the impact of that was like some of us online didn't feel like we were a part of the conversation. Right. So it's super simple of like, and the person I was giving the feedback to was like, absolutely. Got it. Yep. Makes total sense. Cause it was not personal. It was, hey, here's the situation, very clear. Here was the thing you missed out on. And here's the impact to, right. Now, is it going to ruin the business? Of course not. Right. But when we're always looking at how can we get a little better, that's why I love this feedback approach on very simple. What was the situation? What was the behavior or the behavior change we need to see? And how is that going to impact going forward? I think it's a great tool, great piece of framework for any leader / coach out there.
Agree. I use that with my staff as well. We do, evaluations periodically, and I always try to have a situation for them to understand what I'm asking. If I'm going to ask them for a behavior change, I need to have an example. I need to share with them what the situation is. That's the most powerful way, is to have a story behind something. And usually it's pretty good feedback. Staff people want to be, I think they want to learn, they want to be mentored, but that's a real non-personal way to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love hearing that.
Yeah. So thank you. Help me out right away. Put it right into practice.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Beth, so when we talk it like in business, we also recruit and we hire, and sometimes we get it wrong, right? And that happens in your world as well. And so I'm just thinking about, how do you assess your players' capabilities, their growth, eventual ceilings, so that you can plan to fill those gaps and leverage their particular strengths of the people you have, but then recruit and fill the gaps for what's necessary for your team to continue to be successful?
Oh, yeah. That's there is so much that goes into that, right?
Yeah.
Our recruiting student, recruiting players, we are trained to make the best educated guess that you can make. And honestly, that's kind of what it is sometimes. You've got, you have evaluation. We don't have a ton of stats on high school, so there can't be a lot of empirical information. So we watch them on the volleyball court. We watch them off the volleyball court. Are they, good volleyball players? Are they good humans? Do they fit into the culture? But we do not always get that right. And you cannot, until you work with someone in probably working with them for about an hour, you learn this stuff. But if you don't clearly work with them, it's hard to know that. I'm always amazed. And that's actually a really powerful statement, because like I can go recruiting and watch a player for, 5 tournaments, 3 days, and then if I got to work with that player for 1 hour on court, which I do sometimes, like let's say for like a USA tryout of some sort, or if I work with that player for 1 hour, I will have 10 times better understanding of their ability to learn and how they take feedback and all of that stuff. So number one, I want talent over experience. And then I'm just looking for people that, whether it's players or staff, that are willing to learn, and that can learn, and that have the tools to learn, that have the kind of confidence to learn. And, being, a great learner means, you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to try to make changes. And we see it all the time. Like, there could be like a big time name recruit that goes to another program and they do this or they do that. And we maybe get like a player that's more of a raw or athlete. And if they're just a great learner, we can get them to do this. So we're always looking for, people that, just character and, have a growth mindset, I guess, to keep it simple. But, staffing's a lot different. When you talked about hiring, I learned maybe the most powerful thing for me from writing this book was how to be better at hiring, because that's such a subjective thing. I think across the board, we probably, do horrible at it in general, most people. One tool that I learned that is in the book and has helped me more than anything is this idea of using case studies in the hiring process. I started doing, we did a lot of Zooms for hiring, of course, during COVID, which was quite efficient because what I started doing, let's say I'm hiring an assistant, I'd make phone calls, I'd call them, I'd call references. And then I would choose, and then I chose and I've done this probably 5 times now, 5 hires, chose, my top 4 candidates through phone calls, and maybe a Zoom with them one-on-one. But then I would put them on a Zoom back to back to back to back, a little time in between with my staff. I did have the luxury sometimes of having Leo on the Zoom with us to kind of moderate this, but basically it's the idea of using case studies to see how people think, see how people, what their values are, but mostly like, are they a critical thinker? Because I think we want that, right? Like I want smart people. I want people that can break stuff down and find solutions. And so we created 4 case studies that were just needs in our program, pretty simple, and presented them to all 4 candidates. And it was mind blowing on the different types of answers that we got, both different answers, but also seeing some people that just couldn't come up with good answers. And there wasn't necessarily a right or a wrong answer. It wasn't a question. It was just a scenario, and we wanted to see how they would process through that. And we would, we call it double click. We would, if they said something, we'd say, hey, that's interesting. Tell me more. And some people you could find that would just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that would just get more interesting and more interesting. And some would be like, oh, does that answer your question? And yeah, that's about all I got. And, I think that's some really good information in the hiring process. And I've had great hires since doing that. Honestly,
That's awesome. I love that technique.
Yeah, that's great.
I try to get everybody to. I am kind of passionate about getting people to use that process.
Well, getting the right people in the right roles is one of the key factors for success. The very baseline foundational level, the right butts in the right seats. Yeah.
And the talent versus experience thing, I'm very passionate about that as well. Like if they're talented in whatever area, they can learn. They're going to be stars. Experience is not, I would take I'll take an older person. I don't care, but talent's the primary key for me. Yeah,
it makes sense. Beth, I know we're getting up against it, and we started this new segment for 2025 called Questions from the Arena. And Questions from the Arena is where we let our teammates know here at ReliaQuest, those that are in the arena with us, they say, hey, this is who we're going to interview. This is her background. And we say, fire questions away if there's, anything that you want to know based on, kind of what we share with our teammates. And Doc and I we're sourcing through them all. And so we try to get about 2 to 4 each episode. So we have 3 questions this time. And so this is more interview style. We're just going to fire them out at you. And this first one I'm going to ask is from Hannah. Hannah asks, what inspired you to shift the mindset from competing to winning in your book? And how has this philosophy transformed your approach to coaching?
Yeah, that's such a great question. When we were coming up with the title for the book, we were just having a philosophical conversation about, everything that Leo and I had been working on. And it came down to, a lot of people spin their wheels. A lot of people work hard. But are you working hard efficiently? And that's really the difference. And if you're, it's kind of funny. We see this in the gym all the time also. Like we have some players that will go, they want to be efficient. So they'll look at something that we want them to change and they'll make the change really easily. And then we have other players that just need rep after rep after rep. And I'm like, if you just be a little bit more intentional in the learning process, you don't need that many, reps. But I think most people work really hard with great passion, but are we being efficient? Are we getting the work done that needs to, get done? Are we wasting time on things? Are we directed? Do we have relentless pursuit of mastery? All these things. And so, I have pretty good systems in place through my career. Like I'm kind of that. I want to be efficient because I'd rather, I want to go up to the mountain skiing or something. And so I had pretty good systems in place. So I wasn't reinventing the wheel all the time. But I think what I've learned even more is it wasn't always the right systems. It wasn't always the right work that we were doing. And so really going through those exercises of understanding what is going to move the dial for my organization and only spending time on those things. And everything else has to go by the wayside. It just, this relentless pursuit of and mono-focused is what really leads to winning. And yeah, I think that's just a powerful concept to think through.
Doc, before you ask the next question, I got to
Yeah.
tell a story
Oh,
because that was, I loved how you phrased it. Are you working hard or working hard efficiently? And that reminded me of a story. So when I used to work with the Seattle Mariners, and this guy just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, Ichiro Suzuki. So Ichiro was there, and he threw off my whole idea that you have to be first one in, last one to leave. He blew it to smithereens because he was the last one to arrive and the first one to leave, and he was the best player, obviously, and he just got inducted to the Hall of Fame a few days ago. But he blew it to smithereens on that idea right there, where so efficient. He was so intentional from the time he stepped in through those clubhouse doors to the time post game and he showered and he was wiping down his bat and wiping down his glove before he left. Like, it was the most efficient use of time I've ever seen. And everything was intentional. And so it really hits on that idea that you just mentioned around working hard efficiently. So thank you. Sorry, I had to share that because it's top of mind.
yeah. Awesome. All right. So I have a question from Chuddy. Chuddy wants to know, building a coaching program from the ground up is no easy feat, while doing so successfully is even more challenging. What would you say were the hardest lessons you learned while building out the program that you wish you knew early or earlier in your tenure, and why were they the hardest lessons?
Yeah, great question. It probably, the thing I learned was that I needed to have more help. When I first started, I did everything. And that wasn't going to grow the organization, right? So you start building, your staff and building, trying to expand your program. And that's the whole idea. And then you've got to get good at delegation as the, thing expands. But one of the biggest lessons I learned through this whole process is the challenge, I guess, of not losing touch points with people not necessarily lower in the organizations, but, let's say our players in my example, I had so much staff that I had delegated stuff to, which was the right thing to do, support staff. And what I learned was that their touch points with the athletes were getting to be more than my touch points with the athletes. And that was a problem because as a leader, I can't delegate responsibility. I have to understand what's going on. And I have to have, the relationship and the trust with the athletes. And so that was a real mind-blowing thing for me of like, I started struggling with my relationship with them. And it just hit me of like, well, of course I would, because I've lost touch points with them. So I've re-engaged with the student athletes. One of the most important things I do is my relationship with the student athletes to get their, to help them. And so I've re-engaged my touch points fairly drastically. So one of the things with delegation is you're not delegating so you can go out to the mountain skiing, in all honesty. You're delegating so you can do more and other things and things that merit your time and attention. And so I, recognized for me, it was going, everything above the line for me had to be player development, which included relationships and watching video and understanding all these things, player development on off the court, team development, which, Nicole, you helped with us with a lot, is the relationship building, the trust, all of that, and then recruiting. And then anything besides those three things were going below my line. But I had lost my touch points. I had delegated so much. And so I think that's an important lesson to learn of you're not delegating to go golf. You're delegating to do other things.
That's a great point to highlight. I like how you said that, where you're delegating so you can actually do more, right? And I think that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, and I just got to highlight one other thing she said. You can't delegate responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
So as the leader, you are still responsible for the outcome, even though someone else might be doing the task. And I think that's an important component to remember as well.
I talk about keeping a pulse on things. Like I tell my staff all the time, like, you don't want me to find out about something from someone else. Like, just share with me. There's, that's a whole nother topic about the difference between tasks and projects. Like, tasks are kind of simple and I don't necessarily need to be involved. If I delegate something, just get it done. Maybe tell me it's done so I don't wake up at 3 a.m. wondering. But the projects is different. There's a lot more interaction. But at the end of the day, I still have to understand everything that's going on in the organization. And that's, I guess, talk about keeping a pulse on things.
It's great. That's a great, yeah, another great ad. It's like one of those things like, oh, can we unpack task versus project? But that's made for another time. So last question from the arena. Yeah. No, I love even how simple you made it right there.
They'll just have to read the book.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last question from the arena. This one's from Brittany, and this one is also around shifting the team's mindset from a competing mindset to a winning mindset. And she asked, could you give some examples of how your team practices a winning mindset day to day?
Oh boy. I think we compete a lot. One of the things you have to learn is how to compete. That's not, it's not inherent in everybody. I do think that there's a couple things that are really important to be successful. One is having confidence, and the second one is thriving in competition. And not everybody thrives in competition, and some people only survive. But we compete every single day very intentionally to put them through hard things and just to learn how to compete. And I think it's an important concept in not just, I know it says stop competing, but you're trying to get to, competing at a higher level to win. And then I think, setting clear expectations every day in the gym. We some coaches don't want to tell, their team what they're going to do in practice that day. That's not my mindset. My mindset is these are the things that we need to accomplish in practice. And when we accomplish them, we're done. And we might not accomplish them, but did we grow? We debrief every single day at the end of practice. And also at the end of drills sometimes, constantly talking about what did we learn? What's the lesson? What's the lesson? What do we got to get better at? And I think there's so much that goes into a winning culture, but setting clear expectations and then looking at, are we accomplishing what we said we were going to accomplish? Because, we get better at what we measure. And that's a big concept in the world of volleyball. So we have to measure things, whether it's empirically or somewhat subjectively, but we have to measure things to understand, are we getting better and moving the dial? So I think that's a big thing to move the dial to winning.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, we say here, what you measure, you can manage, and what you manage, you can improve, right? It's kind of the same idea
exactly.
where it's like, yeah, you got to measure it. Beth, thank you so much. This is so cool. And I'll just tell you, as a person, I just met you for the first time on this, but this is what I enjoyed most, seeing you and Doc connect and how much you appreciated her and how much she impacted you in your program. So it was fun for me to sit here and just kind of watch this. It's super cool.
Well, I will say, Nicole worked with our program a lot. She had a huge impact on both our players individually, but also me. Nicole, I can remember a lot of conversations you and I would have walking down the hallway, walking back to our offices, and either you're letting me vent or you're giving me a little, piece of feedback, or I'm asking you questions. And kind of even somewhat organic conversations were so powerful. And so, yeah, I miss you, and it's good to see you. And you're just one of the best in the business.
Thank you. That's an incredible compliment. And I miss you too. I think about you guys all the time. So we'll have to get DMAC out here and we can both come to a volleyball game together this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come on out.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. His daughter plays volleyball, so we could bring her. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about that later. But hey, where can people connect with you or find you or go and get the book? I know people are going to want to get this book after this. So where should we send them?
Yeah. Our book is on Amazon, both written and audio. And I do have a website. It's called, I think it's in my book. Hold on. I think it's Beth.Launiere@gmail. Oh, no dot. BethLauniere.com. Sorry, BethLauniere.com. It's got a lot of the stuff from our book on there, but my email's on there as well. If anyone wants to, shoot an email and reach out, be happy to correspond with them. But yeah, I think, the another nice thing about the book, I think, is we got like a really good table of content. So, you can read it from start to finish, which is great, but you can also go, hey, I need some refresher on the hiring process or
Mm.
fundraising or, all these different things. So, yeah, I think it's just a great resource for a lot of different things.
Well, and Utah Volleyball is all over social media also, right? I mean, so people can follow Utah Volleyball on
Yeah. Instagram,
Instagram and like,
Facebook,
yeah.
X. Yep. Everything.
Yeah, there you go. We still got to ask you our last question, though. We have one last question
Oh
for
my
you.
gosh, how
And
did I forget this?
so,
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
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 I know. I'm looking at you going,
Go
I'm
for it.
going to ask the
Yeah,
last question. What are you
yeah.
doing? So, we ask all of our guests the same question. It's kind of a thread throughout all of our episodes. No show dogs mentality is about one thing and one thing only, which is doing the work. Like, we don't care if it looks pretty. It's great when it does, but that's not our concern. Our concern is doing the work, getting the job done. Being more of a hunting dog than a show dog, willing to do the things that others aren't willing to do. And so the question is, like, reflecting on your career up to this point, which has just been phenomenal, such a legacy. What would you say are some of the things, or the one big thing that you've been willing to do that maybe others weren't, that has helped you be successful?
Mm. I think I have the mentality of my family is in a blue collar industry. We kind of own the company, so a little bit of white collar there. But from Michigan, and we were in the tool and die business. That's what I grew up with. And I've always had the mentality of that you have to do the work. I have a saying that at the end of the day, if we work hard and we have fun, we're going to be successful. And we also talk about, like, when you walk in the gym, we have these doors. When you go through those doors, work is going to be done. And our players understand that. It's one of the things that gets talked about, like when recruits come into our practice or players that are fairly new, they go, it's really amazing the efficiency of the work being done. And so, yeah, you have to be willing to do the work. There can be no excuses. If I have to go get on a plane to go up to Alaska to recruit a player at a horrible time in the middle of winter, I'm going to do it because it has to be done. And, I think just a relentless pursuit of mastery dictates that you are going to do the work. And that term comes from Karch Karai, the USA national team coach and, multi-time Olympian. And I love that. I love that phrase, relentless pursuit of mastery. That's what we're trying to do. But you got to do the work to get there.
Awesome.
That's great. Beth, thank you so much. We just really appreciate your time today. And it's obvious why you've had so much success at the University of Utah. And we just wish you the best going forward and look forward to next season to see what you guys do. So thanks again for joining
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. That was fun.
Absolutely. Go out and make it a great today.